Hello and welcome to today's talk on human geography, where space matters. Today, we're going to talk about three broad concepts that are a little confusing to most people, even experts in the field. The first is space, the second is place, and the third is scale. And no, we don't mean the thing you step on and weigh yourself in the morning. And when we talk about those three topics, we start to think spatially. And when we think spatially, we need to talk about a couple shoulds. First is location. Second is condition. Next, connection. And finally, region. Because when we combine these four aspects, we think spatially. But let's look at them a little bit more in depth and see what we can really get out of these four concepts. The first is location. And let's not make this any confusing than it really is. Location really means your position, and specifically your position in space. So, if we were talking to someone about a city, let's make the city Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Pittsburgh's position in space, yeah, I'm not an artist. Pittsburgh's position in space is about right there, hopefully. And when we see Pittsburgh's position in space, we can then start to understand how to make comparisons, because now we know what to compare to. But when we start to compare, we want to start to look at the conditions, specifically what place. And by place, we're not just talking about a location. What we're talking about is a mixture of things in a location, a mixture of stuff. What kind of stuff are we talking about? Well, let's look at it this way. We have the environment. We also have history. We also have politics. Then we can talk about economics. And finally, culture. When we have these 5 things, this stuff, if we were to take them and put them through a mixing machine, what we start to see is a place that has meaning. Because if there's nothing in a place, that might be interesting, but this is the stuff that humans and the natural environment bring into a specific location that gives it meaning. Let's look at an example. Let's take Pittsburgh again. So Pittsburgh has 3 rivers that flow into the city. Alright, 2 in and 1 out. When we look at Pittsburgh, these rivers helped establish a history of steelmaking that made the city very wealthy, that created politicians that wanted to keep this wealth and drive it, that made immigrants move into the city and develop it in a certain way. And this certain way led to more steel being made, and more steel led to pollution. And so that pollution helped drive people away from the city. So now we can see this relationship about this one place, Pittsburgh, and how the stuff that created this place gave that city meaning. They're flipping it today, and we can start to see the steel mills being gone. The politics are changing, the economics is changing, and the culture is changing as well. So when all of these things are changing, now the history is going to be a little different, because the environment's going to be a little cleaner, and people are going to want to come back into the city. Interesting. But now, with those conditions, what we really are saying is we want to study those connections. And those connections are the links. And what we mean by links are either natural or artificial. And when we think of natural links, think about a river. A river connects two places, and that's made by nature. We could also have a street, and that street is created by humans. But the one thing they have in common is that they link one place to another in space. And when we look at those links, what we start to do is make comparisons. And in those comparisons, we have to take one more thing into consideration. And that is the concept of regions. And regions really comes down to a group of places. And those places usually have similar artificial traits that we give them. So we can think of, in the United States, a state, maybe Pennsylvania and California. We can compare these two regions. And when we talk about regions, that's where this concept of scale comes in. So one scale is the state scale. Maybe another, if we want to get a little bit smaller, is a household. Maybe we want to compare homes. Or maybe we're looking at the people in those homes. That is when we think of scale. The smaller scale we have goes down to the individual. That's the smallest. But maybe we can go up to the global scale. If we want to look at the environment, that's a global issue. But these four concepts, they are what really connect human geography together. And if we want to put it into one word, we're looking at where things are located in space. And when we continue to think like that, we start to think spatially. But so what? Who really cares about that, right? Well, geography has something special about it. When we start to think spatially, then we can start to think about how certain things affect one another and create patterns. So if we wanted to think of geography in a certain way, we can start to think that there are reasons for things being where they are. And there might even be advantages for things being in a certain place. But there could also be penalties for things being in the wrong places. When we take all of this together, we start to become spatial thinkers. And if you're looking at human geography, especially you AP human geographers out there, this kind of mindset is extremely important, because when we think about space, place, and scale, we start having this idea of how patterns emerge and how we can look at why things are in that area. And when we start to do that, that's when we start really to see the beauty of human geography. And maybe we can start to see how and why things happen. Thanks for watching, guys.